The general returned from his campaign, but he brought back a pregnant woman with him. Hearing this news, I touched my own belly, because I was thin. At 5 months pregnant, I was only just beginning to show, wearing slightly loose outer clothes. No one could tell I was expecting. 6 months ago, by imperial decree, I married the general. 4 months ago, by imperial decree, he went to war. Now he had brought back a woman 3 months pregnant. All in all, his affection for me lasted just over 100 days. So, what was there to hesitate about? The news came that the general would arrive in the capital tomorrow morning. That night, I packed my personal belongings and, without informing the old madam, returned to my parents' home alone with Bailing. Bailing was a maid given to me by my sister-in-law. She didn't talk much, but was steady and loyal. My parents' brother and sister-in-law saw me return without a hint of blame. Their eyes held only worry and heartache. I sat down slowly and leisurely picked up a cup of tea to sip in. The past year, no moment had felt as peaceful as this one. My calmness silenced the room and surprised my family. Runger, you, my brother couldn't hold back first, repeating my name. I chuckled. You all leave us. I dismissed the servants. I stood up slowly, helped my parents sit down, then took my sister-in-law's hand and sat beside her. I looked at my father, mother, brother, and sister-in-law one by one. Father, mother, do you want a grandson? Brother, sister-in-law, do you want a child? Just 2 sentences, but like thunder they shocked everyone present. My father and mother cast dissatisfied glances at me. Disappointment appeared in my brother's eyes, while my sister-in-law looked at me with pain. I slowly stood up. Under their gaze, I lifted my outer garment. Bang! A semicircular protruding belly popped out in front of them. Amidst their collective astonishment, I voiced my idea. Shortly after the general went to war, I realized I was pregnant. But I didn't announce it. My sister-in-law was the daughter of a military commander. She had been stationed at the border with her father since childhood, participating in dozens of battles, big and small. She only returned to the capital at 15, falling in love with my brother at first sight. When the emperor asked my sister-in-law what reward she wanted, she said she wanted my brother to be her husband. The emperor laughed and granted it. My sister-in-law wasn't a traditional noble lady. She grew up on the border, was skilled in martial arts, and had a free-spirited personality. Her fearless temperament deeply attracted me. I liked her very much and regarded her as a hero. Unfortunately, married for 2 years, my sister-in-law's belly remained silent. My grandmother was anxious, clamoring for my parents to quickly find a concubine for my brother to spread the branches and leaves. Me parents were relatively open-minded and respected my brother's decision, but they also valued offspring. Whenever they found an opportunity, they would hint to my brother to help my sister-in-law recuperate properly, striving to conceive early boy or girl. Either was fine, as long as there was one. My brother secretly invited an imperial physician friend to take my sister-in-law's pulse. The physician said that because my sister-in-law had damaged her foundation, it would be difficult for her to conceive in this life. My brother was open-minded. He felt that having my sister-in-law's company in this life was enough. Whether they had children didn't matter. If a child was truly needed, adopting one from relatives or outside was fine. In short, he would never want any woman other than my sister-in-law. Regarding this, my sister-in-law was both moved and pained. She deeply loved my brother and naturally hoped to be loving with him until their hair turned white, not wanting him to take a concubine. But she couldn't bear to let my brother be childless because of her. She struggled daily with this contradiction. I heard she recently entertained the thought of divorcing my brother, and he was currently coaxing her back. Knowing this, my parents sighed repeatedly. In this world, it is hard to have both. At time, I had just realized I was pregnant and secretly went to a clinic to confirm it. I had the thought of giving the child to my sister-in-law, but immediately I changed my mind, feeling I would be letting down the general. This was his first child, and a legitimate one at that. If it was a boy, he would be his eldest legitimate son, the old madam's eldest legitimate grandson. The importance of this child to the general's manor went without saying. Moreover, before the expedition, the general treated me very well, Emotionally, as a wife, I couldn't bear to let him down. But still, I didn't tell anyone about the pregnancy except bailing in between. I thought many times about just making it public every time I was about to speak. I changed the subject. I don't know why, but there was always a trace of hesitation blocking me, until Bailing told me that the general not only had another woman outside but was bringing her back. Only then did I make up my mind. Before leaving for war, he vowed solemnly, more than once expressing his loyalty to me, saying he would only love me in this life every time. I was moved beyond words. I secretly swore in my heart that I would never fail him in this life. However, since he had broken his vow and loved a second person, then I could fail him. Since he had a second woman, his child could naturally have a second father. I completely concealed my pregnancy from the general's manor. I wanted to give the child to my brother and sister-in-law. After hearing me out, my brother's eyes widened. Me sister-in-law's eyes filled with tears. My mother didn't know what to say or do. Only my father maintained a trace of composure. He said, "Wronger, go back to the general's manor today. Your brother and I will go to the palace." He pulled my brother out. My mother and sister-in-law held me, looking left and right, looking and looking again. The next day, the general arrived at the mansion with the pregnant woman. Before he could mentally prepare how to explain to his family, especially his wife of only 6 months, the emperor's oral decree arrived from the palace. Post-war reconstruction meant many industries awaited revitalization. The empress selected a group of noble ladies to pray for the state at the imperial temple for 6 months. Me sister-in-law and I were both on the list, so I hurriedly left with the eunuch who came to deliver the decree. Before leaving, I glanced indifferently at the general. In just a few months, he had lost a lot of weight and looked haggard. I also scanned the woman standing beside him, pale, slightly heroic-looking, not very beautiful standing together. They looked haggard. The general stared at me constantly, complex emotions flashing in his eyes. Separated for months, my belly hadn't grown visibly, but my face had rounded out, making me look even more beautiful than before marriage, countless times brighter than the woman beside him. But since he was blind, I could only reluctantly offer sincere congratulations on behalf of the whole family. The empress was my paternal aunt. She arranged for my sister-in-law and me to stay in a separate courtyard. Our daily homework was copying Buddhist scriptures. There were over a dozen noble ladies accompanying us, each with different chanting, copying scriptures, meditating, reciting Buddha's name. Everyone did their own thing without interfering with each other. Soon, my sister-in-law was diagnosed with pregnancy and was urgently sent back to the Marquis Manor to nourish the fetus. The heir's wife being pregnant was a great joy for the entire Marquis Manor. 6 months later, at my nephew's 1-month-old celebration, my father and brother invited many people. The noble ladies who practiced with my aunt also went. Everyone surrounded my sister-in-law and the child, offering full blessings. My sister-in-law looked radiant from being well-nourished. My little nephew was chubby and white. Although still small, one could see he had handsome features, very much like my brother, while I looked very much like my brother. I reluctantly touched the child's small hand and looked at my brother and sister-in-law. They looked at me gratefully. The empress was someone who cared for her maiden family. She didn't hesitate to give up 6 months of opportunity to compete for favor with noble consort Yan, working together with us to complete the great task of the Marquis Manor's inheritance. Seeing her cute grandnephew, her smile almost spilled off her face. The emperor's favored concubine, noble consort Yan, was the general's aunt. The empress said, "This lets Bengong breathe a sigh of relief. Hemp, that woman surnamed Yan fights with Bengong, but can she win? Our family has a successor. What about hers?" "Ha ha ha ha!" My brother, Yang Wenyu, was the only son of the Marquis Manor. My husband, Yan Wei, was the only son of the general's manor. Yan Wei had been assassinated several times at the border once. It was exceptionally dangerous. To protect that woman, his reproductive organ was injured. After treatment, he could barely perform as a man, but he would never have children again. This was the main reason he risked universal condemnation to bring that woman back. Originally, he wanted to keep that woman secretly at the border. He had feelings for that woman, but not enough to shake his home in the capital. His main purpose in returning this time was to continue treating his hidden illness. Bringing this woman back was to protect the child in her belly. If he truly couldn't reproduce again, this child would be his only one. He valued offspring extremely highly. He couldn't lose his only child. These were secrets, but given my sister-in-law's connections, they couldn't be kept hidden. When I heard this news, I became even more determined not only to give away the child in my belly, but also to ensure he would never see him in his lifetime. Me, aunt, parents, and sister-in-law were all willing to help me fulfill this wish. For a heartless person, no one wants them to live well. Aunt truly loved me. Before returning to the palace, to give me more time to recuperate, she issued a decree extending my prayer time at the temple by 3 months. She sent word to General Yan that extending my prayer time was because she couldn't bear for me to witness the border woman he brought back giving birth, lest I develop resentment towards him and estrange our marital bond. No matter how much Yan Wei missed me, he could only swallow his words of longing. Before returning to the general's manor, I first went to the Marquis manor to see the child. The child was raised extremely well. He carried the hope of the entire Marquis manor and was everyone's little son. Since having him, my father, who had thought of retiring, went to court more diligently and with more vigor. Me grandmother wanted to see and hold him every day, muttering constantly, good baby, so good, so good." My sister-in-law and brother were even more loving. My sister-in-law's maiden family also placed high hopes on this child. Seeing my happy family living a thriving life, I really felt I had nothing more to ask for. But my family didn't think so. My sister-in-law held my hand and instructed me to divorce if I wanted to. I smiled and nodded. I returned to the general's manor. By this time, that woman had also given birth. It was a girl, thin and small, obedient and quiet. When I went to see her, Yan Wei stood right behind me. I didn't know if he was afraid I would hurt the child out of jealousy, or if he feared I would be sad seeing the child and wanted to comfort me. He stayed inseparable from me. Seeing his cautious look, I said, "General, don't worry. This is your child. I won't hurt her." I then said to that woman, concubine Zheng, "Giving birth and raising a child isn't easy. You must take good care of your body and the child. The child doesn't need to come to pay respects to me before she is 3. Concubine Zheng gave me a grateful look. I looked at the child again. The little girl was in her arms, eyes closed, little mouth twitching, moving just like my son did when he was born. Instinctively, I wanted to offer a few words of advice, but seeing me staring at the child, she became nervous, quietly leaning back, her face guarded. Seeing her like this, I sighed inwardly. Ah, forget it. Looking at her closely, she was even more haggard than when we first met, her face pale and showing signs of aging. I somewhat understood her nervousness. Currently, her beauty had faded, and the child was her most important bargaining chip. Truth be told, I had resentment towards her, but not much. Calculating it all, I still hated Yan Wei more. Before marriage, I often heard stories of devoted women being let down. Some husband promised not to take concubines first, but after marriage either slept with a maid or a cousin. After the incident, instead of reflecting on themselves, they were used to pushing the responsibility onto the woman, either fabricating that the maid was shameless and used drugs to climb into bed, or justifying that they were drunk and mistook another woman for their wife. Except for the very few who divorced, most wives could only accept it even if they were aggrieved to death. My mother asked me, "Wronger, if your husband did such a thing, what would you do?" I said, "I'd kill them all." My mother quickly said, "We can't do that. They deserve to die, but it is not worth sacrificing yourself. Wronger, remember, there are always other ways to vent your anger. Yes, anger always needs to be vented. According to spy reports, Concubine Zheng was also a daughter from a good family. Her father was a city guarding official. She practiced martial arts since childhood. After Yan Wei went there, she volunteered to join the army, fighting side by side with Yan Wei. They saved each other's lives and developed feelings, uncontrollably embracing each other. I didn't know how to judge. Not being in that situation, it was hard to understand such feelings. I couldn't understand either of them. Concubine Jung came from an official's family. Her upbringing couldn't be poor. How could she knowingly approach the general when he had a wife? The general, a man who valued reputation so much, knowing his wife was waiting faithfully at home, still broke his vow and recklessly responded to another woman's affection. It was as if his intelligence had been lowered. Perhaps, in the face of life and death, people become different. The feelings generated mutually were also different from the feelings cultivated between Yan Wei and me in daily life. Otherwise, why the betrayal? But then I thought of my brother and sister-in-law. Theirs was love in daily life, yet so firm he was unwilling. If I hadn't secretly sent away Yan Wei's only son behind his back, I think I would hate him to death. But after giving the child to my sister-in-law and seeing him kept in the dark, struggling bitterly for a son, I felt indifferent again, because for a general who valued sons more than life, it was hard to compare who had failed whom more. Noble consort Yan found the best imperial physicians to secretly treat Yan Wei. Yi heard the effect wasn't good. He needed to save up for a long time to barely complete the act once. He didn't want to give it to concubine Jung. Several times, he came looking for me with a nervous face, but I persuaded him to retreat. I said, "General, don't waste it on me. I can't guarantee I can conceive. Concubine Jung has proven she can. The opportunity is precious. Save it for concubine Jung. Don't waste it." Yan Wei was ashamed, angry, and unwilling, he said. "Wronger, I know you are angry and blame me for failing you, but you can't hold on to it forever. You must also talk about the principles of being a wife. Since you are my lawfully wedded wife, you have the duty to bear children for me." Hearing this, I smiled. "General, if we talk about principles, forgive my dullness, but I have 2 points of confusion. I ask the general to clarify. First, a gentleman's promise is weightier than 1,000 gold pieces. The general promised to love only me, and I believed it deeply. However, we were married for little more than 3 months when you engaged in illicit relations with concubine Jung without a matchmaker. What principle is this? Second, the legitimate wife has not yet given birth, but the concubine already has a child. What principle is this?" Hearing this, Yan Wei's face turned purple, but he couldn't utter a single word. Knowing he was in the wrong and couldn't do anything to me, he could only leave gnashing his teeth. He didn't go to concubine Jung either. Bailing said the general often stood outside the madam's courtyard late at night, gazing inside. She said that since returning from the campaign, the general hadn't stayed overnight in concubine Jung's courtyard. She said this was the general showing his determination to the madam. The general loved and valued the madam, and would definitely not fail her again. I said nothing. So what if it was true? So what if it wasn't? Was it just because of a concubine Jung between him and me? Speaking of concubine Jung, she was from an official family after all, and valued face. Since I didn't call her to my courtyard, she never came once. Rumors spread outside that the general's backyard was restless. The madam was jealous, and couldn't tolerate a concubine who had the merit of bearing offspring. The rumors weren't widespread, but they still startled the old madam, who was devoted to Buddhism. Since I married into the general's manor, the old madam had treated me reasonably well. Although she rarely left the Buddhist hall, nothing in the manor could be hidden from her. She brought Yan Wei and concubine Jung to mediate between us. Whatever she said, I listened with my head bowed, until she said, "Concubine Jung is also from an official's family, not comparable to girls from ordinary families. Treat her like your own sister. Only when wives and concubines are harmonious will the backyard be peaceful, and your husband can build his career with peace of mind." I was unconvinced and lifted my neck to look at the sky. The old madam's face immediately looked bad. She said, "Wronger, are you unconvinced?" I said, "Answering old madam regarding what you said later. Wronger is indeed unconvinced. You said ordinary girls can't compare to concubine Jung. Is that really so? Before the general went on campaign, there were quite a few ordinary girls coming and going in the general's manor, and there were maids everywhere. So many girls had the chance to contact the general, but have you seen any of them climb the general's bed? Since concubine Jung comes from an official family, she naturally knows the importance of reputation. Not only did she disregard her own reputation, but she also disregarded the deep affection between the general and his newlywed wife, and disregarded the general's public promise not to take concubines. She privately accepted the general's affection, causing estrangement between the general and his wife and damaging the general's reputation. Such conduct, how is it better than girls from ordinary families? As soon as my words fell, everyone was as quiet as a chicken. I even had the heart to kill. Naturally, I wasn't afraid of retorting to an old lady. Being disrespectful was just being disrespectful. The old madam was so angry she stroked her chest repeatedly. Concubine Jung's face turned white instantly. I think my words reminded her of the dignity she should have had. Her self-esteem hurt. Yanwei stared straight at me. I bowed to the old madam and left quickly. After that, concubine Jung's presence became very low. Yanwei didn't seek her out and rarely visited the child. She didn't fight, basically never left her courtyard, and just focused on raising her daughter. I didn't like her, but I didn't hate her much either. We had a tacit understanding. I didn't actively seek trouble with her, and she stayed quietly on the side. The general's manner was the same with or without her. I wanted to treat Yanwei as if he didn't exist too, but he was the master of the general's manor. He couldn't be ignored. His feelings for me were complex. He had failed me. I didn't propose divorce, saving his face. Contrary to his expectations, I accepted the woman he brought back relatively calmly. Although I didn't give the mother and daughter special care, their monthly allowances were distributed on time and in full, and I didn't persecute them. Yanwei expressed gratitude to everyone about this and felt even more guilty when facing me. Therefore, he was extremely tolerant of me. He granted me a lot of freedom that other noble ladies didn't have. I could enter and leave the general's manor freely, go to the temple any time, and return to my maiden home whenever I wanted. I felt such days were quite good, compared to marrying other men who might treat me well but trap me in the inner courtyard. I preferred this. But others didn't see it that way. They saw me as a woman without favor and without children, truly pitiful in the extreme. Even noble consort Yan, who had always looked down on me, felt I was truly pitiful. She transferred her sympathy to my aunt, reducing the number of fights with her. My aunt was able to rest and recovered a lot of spirit. Sometimes my aunt would summon me into the palace. She loved me and gave me rewards, whatever she rewarded. I accepted happily and expressed that there was no need to worry. I was living very comfortably. She didn't believe it, always having a look of suppressed sympathy. I thought to myself, sympathy for what? For not having a man? Compared to me, how much better off were the women cooped up in the palace? Me uncle, the emperor, was a good emperor but not a good man. He followed the path of balancing the court and the harem, taking the daughters of many officials as concubines. He wasn't lustful and was diligent in government affairs. After having 3 sons, he basically stopped stepping into the harem. Of these 3 sons, my aunt had 2. Noble consort Yan had 1 plus 2 princesses born to other concubines. There were no other children. Many women in the harem, apart from receiving favor once or twice upon entering the palace, never saw his face again in their lives. How could they compare to my carefree life? But I couldn't say it. I had to keep a low profile. Time passed quickly. Except for concubine Jung's illegitimate daughter, the general's manor had no other children. The old madam somehow found out about Yanwei's physical condition. After all, she studied Buddhism and knew that offspring depended on fate and couldn't be forced. Not only did she stop pressing me to have children, but she also stopped pressing concubine Jung. She focused entirely on Buddhism. Some people advised her to take a few more concubines for Yanwei, casting a wide net to catch 1 or 2, but she shook her head and refused. In the entire general's manor except for Yanwei, who hadn't given up hope and searched everywhere for secret recipes for a son. From top to bottom, no one thought the general would have children again. Over time, concubine Jung became angry. She often walked around the manor with her daughter. When she met Yanwei, she would gaze at him obsessively, Everyone in the manor knew the situation. As the birth mother of the general's manor's only child, no one provoked her, and no one provoked me. In my spare time, I fell in love with martial arts and Taoism. I discovered that practicing martial arts was truly good before. I would constantly catch colds every winter. After practicing martial arts, my body became much stronger. Even in the coldest weather, I rarely got sick. My martial arts were basically taught by my sister-in-law, very practical for fitness and self-defense, without any fancy moves. Most of the time, I practiced alone in the general's manor. Yanwei and concubine Zheng both knew martial arts. Seeing me practice, Yanwei was curious and would come to watch. After many times, concubine Zheng also came to watch. I didn't know if she was watching me or the general. Who cared? Anyway, I startled them both. My moves were very decent, seeing I didn't chase them away. They carefully invited me to spar. I didn't refuse. Mainly, I really wanted to know if, with my level, I could kill them single-handedly. After being easily defeated by them, I stopped accepting their invitations to compete. Yanwei always thought I was all show. Concubine Zheng breathed a sigh of relief every time she saw me lose. She believed she still had areas where she surpassed me. Until another assassination attempt on Yanwei occurred outside the manor. I dodged easily, found the right opportunity to strike, and amidst feints and real attacks, saved Yanwei several times. He was stunned. Concubine Zheng, fighting alongside him, had a dark expression. The only area where she surpassed me had now been surpassed by me, seeing her incomparable inferiority. I sincerely comforted her. As long as you are the biological mother of Yanji, no one in this general's manor can shake your position in the general's heart. The despair in her eyes deepened. Despite being criticized for improper behavior, she was born an official's daughter and had her pride. If she had no single point to attract the general and had to rely solely on a child to establish herself like other favored women in the backyard who had never been to the battlefield, it was a devastating blow to her. However, the reality she faced was crueler than she thought. Even if she wanted to rely on the child to fight for favor, Yanwei didn't look at her. His gaze was burning. The moment he saw me, his eyes were full of me. Concubine Zheng aged faster. Yanwei's only daughter, Yanji, slowly grew up, and my nephew, Yang Yanfei, also grew up. Sometimes my sister-in-law would bring Yanfei to the general's manor to see me. Me sister-in-law was very good, always letting Yanfei interact with me more. Our aunt-nephew relationship was very deep. Every time Yunfei came, Yanwei would stare at him obsessively. He treated Yunfei very well. Privately, he always said to me, why did he feel closer to my nephew than to his own daughter, Yanji? Every time, I would feel a bit sour. After all, they were flesh and blood, but I spoke words cold as June frost. I said, if the general hadn't taken concubine Zheng to the battlefield back then, would we have had a child early on too? Would he be just like Yunfei? After speaking, I looked at him with regret. The cold wind swept his conscience. Yanwei couldn't bear it. After a while, he would turn away in guilt. Yanfei didn't have the same feeling towards him. He just clung to me, calling aunt. Aunt very happily in the eyes of us. Aunt and nephew, there was only affection for each other. In a blink of an eye, more than 10 years passed. Yanji reached marriageable age. She was recorded under my name, counted as a legitimate daughter, when she was 3. Yanwei proposed recording her under my name, but wouldn't let me worry about her. Concubine Zheng would still be responsible for her upbringing. Hearing I didn't have to raise her, I agreed immediately. Having taken his son, giving his daughter a title didn't matter. Yanwei put effort into Yanji's education. Yanji was taught well and was a model for noble daughters in the capital. Yanwei indicated to me that Yanji admired Yanfei. He wanted me to go back to my maiden home to propose marriage. I refused. My sister-in-law told me long ago that when Yunfei was 3, her brother had a daughter. They were betrothed from birth. Both families intended to cement closer ties. From childhood, the 2 little ones were often put together to play and cultivate feelings. Now, The affection between that little girl and Yunfei was already very deep. The little girl had a lively and hearty personality, quite like her aunt in her youth. I liked her as soon as I saw her. I had long identified her as Yunfei's wife. As for Yanji, I had no feelings other than respect. Besides, she and Yunfei were half-siblings. I couldn't tell the truth, so I could only stimulate Yan Wei. Yunfei has long been betrothed. You only have this one daughter. Instead of being a main wife, she wants to be someone's concubine. Her mother squeezed between a couple to be a concubine. Does she want to walk her mother's path too? Hearing this, Yan Wei's pupils trembled, and his voice shook. Wronger, she is also your daughter. She calls you mother. I didn't carry her for a day, didn't raise her for a day. Sorry, just a title. She can't be counted as a daughter. I denied it in a low but firm voice. He dared not imagine I would say this. Because I hadn't mistreated Yanji over the years, he thought I had tacitly accepted this daughter. Now that I denied it directly, he couldn't accept it. With a crying tone, he said, "Wronger, how can you say that? You haven't given birth. We are husband and wife. One body, my child is your child." I got angry, suddenly raising my voice. "No, Yanji was born of you and concubine Zheng. She is yours and concubine Zheng's child. I agreed to put her under my name, but that doesn't mean I treat her as a daughter. Although you recognize her as my daughter and the world recognizes her as my daughter, I don't. In my heart, I never recognized her. Besides, whether Jir and I have been close all these years, I think you can see." After speaking, I left, leaving Yan Wei swaying alone in the wind. Sigh, all so pitiful. Although he lost his male function, he was still an upright man. How did he shrink like this in front of his wife? Especially since he had contributed a lot to the country and society over these years, fighting many battles, big and small. He had established many merits, bringing honors to his wife and daughter. Concubine Zheng went from a maid concubine to a side madam, holding a high status in the manor. Her daughter Yanji was also titled a county mistress. Sonli I wanted nothing. He was bent on pleasing me, compensating me. He wanted to request a title for me, but I refused. I didn't care for his merits every time. I saw the light of hope in his eyes turn into fragmented happiness. I didn't discard the title of general's wife because I loved practicing Taoism. My master was an expert hidden in the world. He said Yan Wei and concubine Zheng were my training grounds. Facing their tests, if I could cultivate a compassionate heart, I would succeed. But I never succeeded. My uncle, who loved government affairs, got tired. Finally, the eldest legitimate son was established as the crown prince, and noble consort Yan's son was titled Prince Yan. With his fief in the southernmost part, the crown prince moved into the eastern palace, and Prince Yan went to his fief. The crown prince took over many affairs, and my aunt's position as Empress Dowager was secure. The crown prince was very friendly to the Marquis Manor. The external environment supported the continued glory of the Marquis Manor. Yang Yunfei married his childhood sweetheart cousin. The young couple was very loving. From then on, Yang Yunfei was protected not only by his father's clan, but also by his mother's and wife's clans. I was completely relieved about the Marquis Manor and him. Looking at the general's manor again, Yan Wei was already old. Concubine Zheng never had much beauty, and in middle age she was even more plain. Yan Wei found a promising military officer for Yanji. I had no objection, but concubine Zheng disagreed no matter what. Yan Wei asked her why, but she wouldn't say. Yan Wei got anxious, saying if she didn't give a reason, he would ignore her thoughts and betroth Yanji directly. Only then did concubine Zheng look at me sorrowfully and whisper, "I don't want Jir to marry a military officer. I am afraid Jir will encounter the same situation as the madam." She looked at me with apologetic eyes and continued, "One day, the husband returns from a successful campaign, bringing back a pregnant woman." Hearing this, Yan Wei's face quickly turned black. He looked at me in despair, clutched his chest, and spat a large mouthful of blood. I looked at concubine Zheng with some appreciation, a mistress having this kind of awareness. Not bad. She sighed heavily, looked at me with guilt, and withdrew. He felt very joyful. I didn't expect such a day would come. I was very grateful. I listened to my master's advice and stayed in the Yan manor. In my lifetime, I waited for this day. Although I didn't verbally express resentment towards Yan Wei. The reason I stayed in the general's manor, besides aiding my cultivation, was a hope. I wanted to wait for a sincere apology from Yan Wei. Unexpectedly, Yan Wei didn't give it to me, his mistress did. Live long enough to see everything. The mistress slapping her own face actually made me feel more gratified than slapping her myself. Fine, fine, fine. At this point, there was no need for me to stay in the general's manor anymore. I actively invited Yan Wei. He hurried to see me, wearing the clothes I praised as good-looking before we got married. The clothes' color had faded a lot. The person was also worn out, although his gaze was still fiery, still longing, but ultimately we couldn't go back to the past. He said, "Ronger, have you finally calmed down? You are finally willing to seek me out actively. In the future, we will be like before." He wanted to take my hand. I dodged. He froze on the spot, looking at me in confusion. He didn't put his hand down, keep reaching towards me, wanting to step forward, but daring not to. With my current skills, one kick could send him flying far away. I ignored the fragile longing in his eyes. I said to him, "Let's divorce." He was stunned hearing this. It took him a long time to come back to his senses. He choked out, "Ronger, is it still not okay? More than 10 years, and it is still not okay. Ronger, for more than 10 years, I haven't sought another woman, not a single one." I thought to myself, you wish you could, but can you? As far as I knew, only in the first 2 years of treatment did he have a little ability. Later, he was no different from the eunuchs in the palace. That is why the old lady completely gave up the thought of taking more concubines for him, and showed more love to Yanji. Only then did Yanji have the chance to become the nominal legitimate daughter of the general's manor. He didn't answer me directly, but muttered to himself, repeating things like he couldn't live without me. He said, "Ronger, let's not divorce, let's be like this. You ignore me like before, I continue to strive for your forgiveness, and we spend our lives like this." I said, "Spending a lifetime like this, how dare you think of it? You had a child with another woman, and she grew up. Yanji is old enough to marry. But what about me? How much longer will you delay me?" "More than 10 years. I've been in pain for so many years, can't you see? And you still want me to live with you? Even if I swallow all grievances today, forgive you for breaking your vow, and choose to continue living with you, what about you? What can you do? Can you let me give birth to a child this year? If not this year, next year. If not next year, then the year after. Don't I deserve to have my own child in this life?" Yan Wei collapsed completely. He squatted down and wailed. Roaring is exhausting. After shouting at him, I ignored him. I went back to my courtyard and drank 2 large bowls of mung bean porridge. I said to Bailing, "I am exhausted, but this time we are truly going to be free." Bailing looked at me, a smile rippling from the corners of her eyes and brows. The next day, Yan Wei actively gave me the divorce papers. He said I could take my dowry, and besides that, I could take whatever I wanted from the general's manor. Bailing was overjoyed and packed happily. She said, "Miss, let's take this, and take that too." I said, okay. Now in the entire courtyard, except for the general himself not being ours, everything else is ours. Let's take it all." Hearing this, Yan Wei's eyes dimmed, and his figure became more hunched. I packed my things. When I left, he said softly behind me, "I am sorry, I've failed you in this life. If there is a next life, I will definitely not fail you." I pretended not to hear. I went up the mountain, focused on cultivation. What the master said wasn't entirely correct. Compared to the general's manor, it was easier for me to enter the state on the mountain every day. Besides practicing martial arts, I cultivated. The more I cultivated, the quieter my heart became, and the fewer inner demons I had. Stillness generates wisdom. Looking back at past events, they were just cause and effect. He failed me, I failed him. Failing back and forth, nothing was worth much thought. But I was a layperson after all. Thinking of Yunfei, I would still be very happy. When I was nearly 50, Yunfei learned the truth of his birth. He brought his wife and children to see me. Yunfei not only obtained the position of heir, but also became a trusted confidant of the new emperor, holding immense power. But he was a good official. A child raised by the Marquis Manor had guaranteed character. His being an official was a blessing to the state and the people. Regarding relationships, Yunfei was also good. He looked like my brother. And in relationships, he was like my brother too, both sentimental and devoted. In this world, he set an example as an official and as a husband. He was good in every way. Physique, appearance, character, family background, talent were all superior. Over the years, who knows how many families' daughters had their eyes on him. But he was like my brother, no chambermaids, no concubines, no mistresses. Apart from his wife, there were no other women. Yunfei's wife was also good. Especially her health was excellent. She could bear children, 2 boys and 3 girls, 5 in total, all handsome and promising. Only the youngest son caused some worry, not because his character was poor, nor because his ability was weak. It was because the youngest son, Yang Wei-wu, was an atavism. He looked remarkably like Yan Wei, whom he had never met, not only in appearance but also in personality. The other 4 children all liked literature, only he liked martial arts, playing with spears and sticks all day, watching Yang Wei-wu jumping up and down. I reminded Yunfei to guard the truth. Well, not to disappoint the family, and not to put the clan in a predicament. He nodded. Son understands, mother. Tears instantly filled my eyes. Heaven couldn't bear it. It made Yan Wei suspicious. Yan Ji ultimately married a civil official as a main wife, according to her birth mother concubine Zheng's wish. That civil official treated her very well even during her pregnancy when she couldn't serve him. He didn't take a concubine. Unfortunately, she died of dystocia during childbirth. The daughter she gave birth to suffered asphyxia in the womb. Her cry was weak after birth, and she passed away in less than an hour. Concubine Zheng lost her daughter and granddaughter in succession. Unable to withstand the blow, she followed them within a month. Losing his only daughter, Yan Wei, who knew his fate, almost went mad. Old, wifeless, childless. He couldn't find a way to live on, all day long. He was either mad or drunk, until his colleague unintentionally said to him, "General Yan, isn't it strange? You and Senior Grand Secretary Yang aren't related by blood, but his youngest son doesn't look like him at all, yet looks exactly like you. Seeing that child is like seeing you when you were young, General Yan." These words jolted Yan Wei, giving him a moment of clarity. He saw a straw called hope. Daring not delay a moment, he whipped his horse and went to the training ground. Seeing Yang Wei-wu at the training ground, he almost fell off his horse. The dashing and heroic Yang Wei-wu was a copy-paste version of him. His heart beat wildly. After all, having reached the rank of general, his brain was very sufficient when sober. He began to review, and various doubts emerged. For example, he had just returned from a campaign with great merit. The royal family would only reward him. Why would they arrange for his wife, separated for many days, to go pray? And how was it so coincidental that my sister-in-law also went? After that, my sister-in-law gave birth to young Yunfei. Was he born to my sister-in-law or to me? For example, young Yunfei was very attached to me, originally thought to be deep aunt-nephew affection. But recalling my attitude towards Yunfei, it was clearly a mother towards a child. For example, he always felt a sense of kinship with young Yunfei. Seeing Yunfei, he couldn't look away. Was it really because the child was too outstanding? That was the attraction of blood between father and son, for example. I hinted to him that if we had a child, he would be like Yunfei. Why didn't I say the child would look like someone else, but only like Yunfei? Because Yunfei was our child. For example, I was favored since childhood, backed not only by my father and brother in my maiden home, but also favored by my empress aunt. Yet I accepted his betrayal without madness or fuss. Even though the old lady provoked me into disrespect once, I turned around and made no more noise. This was unreasonable. Before he went to war, he had felt my love. I had also felt his love. People who love each other know that if you truly love someone, you cannot calmly accept their betrayal. If I knew he had another woman, I would definitely be in pain. So he wanted to hide concubine Jung secretly at the border so I wouldn't know. Yet I wasn't very painful and calmly accepted concubine Jung. This showed I also failed him, failing each other. In my heart we were even, so I was that calm as for how I failed him, given that I had no entanglements with any other men, except for sending away his son. He couldn't think of anything else that could hurt him. For example, not only did I not persecute concubine Jung, but I also didn't persecute his only daughter, as if it had nothing to do with me. Logically speaking, if I hadn't borne children, seeing my husband have a child with another woman, I would be mad with jealousy. But I wasn't at all. That was because I had a better child and simply looked down on his and the mistress's output. Having a better spiritual sustenance, not only did I look down on his illegitimate daughter, but I also looked down on him. When he figured it all out, he immediately realized Yang Yunfei was his son, his legitimate son. All children born to Yang Yunfei were his grandsons and granddaughters. His legitimate grandsons and granddaughters, not only did his line not end, but he had a house full of descendants, all legitimate. He was crazy with joy, running to the old madam's grave to kowtow immediately. He said, "Mother, our Yang family line hasn't ended. I have a child, a legitimate son. Ronger gave birth to him secretly behind my back. His name is Yang Yunfei, raised by Ronger's brother. He grew up extremely well, more promising than me. He is now the emperor's most trusted senior grand secretary. Ronger is angry with me and gave him away behind my back. I don't blame Ronger. I failed Ronger first. Mother, my child is better than me. He is single-minded in love. He has only one wife, but has fathered 2 legitimate sons and 3 legitimate daughters. Mother, I have 5 grandchildren, 5. Are you happy? Mother, you haven't seen them. If you saw them, you would be very joyful. Especially my youngest grandson looks exactly like me when I was young. It was through him that I figured out Ronger's nephew Yang Yunfei is actually my legitimate son. Yang Yunfei is good in everything. I have to go to the emperor and recognize him back. I want to recognize them all back." Yan Wei, in a fit of passion, didn't plan and ran directly to the emperor, demanding Yang Yunfei recognize his ancestors and return to the clan. The emperor was not the late emperor who would be grateful for his merits and tolerate his recklessness. The current emperor listened, glanced at him sideways, and said, "You say he is, so he is?" Yan Wei was dumbfounded. Only then did he sober up. He realized that even if his deductions were true, in the emperor's eyes, the stability of the overall situation and the senior grand secretary working for him with peace of mind were more important than whose son the senior grand secretary was. And in the eyes of the world, General Yan Wei had sought a son for years without success and had long gone mad. Everything he said now was a delusion due to his old age and loss of wife and daughter. The emperor didn't want him to prove it, and he couldn't prove anything. He panicked. He ran to find Yang Weiwu, but Yang Weiwu had long been taken by his uncle to the border for experience. As a last resort, he thought of me. Spending a great deal of effort, he climbed the mountain to find me, begging for the truth. Looking at my face that resembled a young girl's, he was stunned. He asked me, "Ronger, why do you look younger than before we got married?" I asked him back, "General, why are you so old?" He said, "I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. Ronger, I regret it so much. How could I do something against our vow for a woman outside? If there were no concubine Jung, how happy our lives would have been. You don't know how good Yang Yunfei is. By the way, Ronger, I know now. Yang Yunfei is our child. Ronger, you are truly cruel. For so many years, watching us father and son so close, yet not letting us recognize each other. Ronger, I don't blame you, but can you let him change back to my surname? If that is really not possible, can you let his son take my surname? They are all descendants of our family." I smiled and said, "General, Yang Yunfei is the descendant of my brother's family." I smiled and continued to ask him, "General, have you forgotten, when you returned from the campaign, didn't you bring back a pregnant woman?" He choked, could not say another word. Heartless man, what more could he want? From then on, at the foot of the mountain where I practiced Taoism, there was an additional thatched hut,